Divine the Mind, and that's Malika. And she's right here in Harlem, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, this is Respect for Life, and we again want to thank the Most High for allowing us another day on this good earth, another day to do some good. And we're very happy to have you with us, ladies and gentlemen, and our guests are on the line. Once again, Respect for Life deals with mental health, and we approach it from a number of angles. Today, we're talking about effective communication. That's something that applies to all of us, whether we're in a business setting or community setting, and definitely within the home, in our relationships. And we have two folks with us this morning to give us some insight. They happen to form a team that has been training in the area of effective communications. But we're going to talk about effective communication, not from the training standpoint, but from everyday life. And what that means is we're going to deal with the basics that allows you and I to learn something that we have not been exposed to before. We want to welcome to the mics and by way of phone, Brother Sami and Brother Barry Smith. Brother Sami Muhammad and Brother Barry Smith, thank you for joining us here on Respect for Life at WHCR.
Thank you. Happy to be with you.
Brother Sami, you with us?
Yes, I am.
Okay, great. You both talk at the same time, so I heard one voice. At any rate, we're going to have a nice time this morning. I'm going to start with you, Brother Sami, because we were in conversation a number of times, and you've been talking about effective communications. You pointed out various situations within the realm of what we were talking about. You say, hey man, that's what happens. You got to have effective communication. Tell us, Brother Sami, how did you begin to get into this area? What was your awakening that allowed you to say, hey man, I need to get into some training where I can be more effective in what I'm trying to do in the business world?
Well, Brother Leroy, it really came to me. I've been into the human services business and entrepreneur, and what happened is that it was a requirement on a employment that I had, and I had many trainings in my life, so I just said, oh, this is just going to be another training. And whole and behold, I met Mr. Barry Smith. He was my trainer, and the training was something I never had in life. It's something that you come across once in your life, and you say, wow, if I had this when I was 17 or when I was 13 years old, that where would I be in life now? That's how dynamic the training was. So it came to me, and Barry came into my life, and it changed. I mean, it changed my life in such a way that I found out stuff about myself that I really didn't know that was there, But the effective communication training was the thing that really opened my eyes on how people want to be, how people hear things. Everybody hear things in a different manner, and people like to be served in a different manner. And once you know how to serve them in the manner that it's applicable to them, then they're more apt to hear you or what you have to say.
How people hear things, and that's, we're not going to get into too much of the training aspect or those realms. I'm sharing this with both of you because that involves a grasp of the basics. What I hear you say, Brother Sami, is that you're getting into this course, this workshop on effective communication. The management says, hey, here's a workshop for you guys, or maybe here's a workshop for you, Sami, I think you need this. And you say, all right, you go along with the program. And it's not Dale Carnegie, it's beyond Dale Carnegie in terms of the revelations that are entailed and that ensue rather. And you say, wow, how people hear. Now, usually when you that speaks to where the person is and how you have to reach that person where he or she is. There is the flip side of that, and that is how just to effectively communicate. But where a person is talks about picking up on certain characteristics, maybe certain cues that the other person might give off. Is that what you ran into?
Well, it's basically people have certain personalities. I'll give you an example. Is that you have your family, and you have young children running around, and you say, "Wow, there goes Jimmy," but he acts just like Aunt Mary. And you have another child that he's just like Uncle Joe. So you see certain personalities, okay, in children that's another people.
Mm-hmm.
So when you see those certain personalities, then they like to be served a certain way.
Okay. All right. Now, the trainer, Barry Smith, you're breaking out certain things to folks in the workshop, and one of the biggest areas of effective communication, in this particular case, picking up on personalities. Can you give us an overview of categories that these personalities fall into?
Well, I could share it this way: that you have people who are stronger in their delivery. You have people who are, let's just use some terms that might be familiar with people. They're reticent, so
they hold back.
Right.
Okay.
They're the sort of individual who you would say they hold back. The truth is, that's not really what that means for that person. That's the title that's given to them, because that's how you react to what they're doing. But that's not how they're being.
Mm-hmm.
That's how you perceive them from the outside. But from the inside, that's not how they're being at all. They're being perfectly normal and who they are. But you're going to respond to them based on what you believe they are. And in kind, they're hearing your resentment of them not responding to you. But the truth is, they're not responding to you. They're responding in the only way they know how. But to you, you're perceiving it as being incorrect. Okay, you're not listening to me. You're not paying attention to me. What I'm saying is not important to you. The truth of the matter is, it's very important to them. They're just listening. And this is how they listen. But that's not what you're accustomed to, and that's not what you're used to being around, so therefore you're resenting the fact that they hear you that way. But what would the dynamics be if you understood that they were giving you more attention than you can possibly imagine?
Go ahead.
Which you're doing that and understanding that, you can then open up to them knowing, in fact, they're not ignoring you. They're paying very close attention to you. Now you have other people with other dynamics. They challenge you. It's not that they don't trust you, they don't believe you. They just want to be sure. They're making sure that you know what you're saying. But it sounds as if they don't believe you. It's not that they don't believe you. They want to put, as it were, their hopes in something that's solid, and they need to confirm it. So they hear you in a completely different dynamic. So to you, it sounds as if this person is really off their rocker. They don't believe me. They don't believe anybody. I don't know how society deals with them. The truth is, this is exactly how they need to be in order for them to be in league with you. But if you don't understand that, you'll push them aside saying, well, they're just going to keep challenging me and giving me a hard way to go all the time, and I'll never be able to work with this person. When in fact, that may be your best ally. Because they can deliver the message in such a way that you get results because they believe in you. They've already tested you and you've been proven. So now they can deliver.
Mm.
But what happens if you push them aside because you don't understand that? And oftentimes that's what we do because we don't understand the dynamics of the other person. We're too busy trying to hear people from our own perspective rather than understanding they have their own.
Let me bring in something that just came to mind. Correct me if I'm off on this. The one that challenges you, who could very well turn out to be your best ally. I tend to put those into a category of Paul, the one that was the adversary of Christianity and then became one of the greatest promoters of Christianity. He challenged first. Then he said that, they said he had an epiphany and he fell off the horse. He saw a vision. But the point is that in everyday life, those individuals who are challengers don't necessarily have to turn out to be your enemy. That's what I'm hearing you say very clearly. I'm just playing it back to you in terms of Paul.
Well, there is no question. There is no question that the results that you spoke of, them being your best ally, is absolutely true. They're challenging you for the sake of making sure that your message is clear. How well can they carry a message they don't believe in?
They can't.
They can't. And therefore, once they believe in the message, they can carry it through anything.
Something just came to mind. And that is, at that time, Secretary Colin Powell. The story behind the story was when he was given material to present to the UN. I believe that was the setting. The guys, the neocons, were setting him up. And he was given material. He threw the material, according to Time magazine, he threw the material away. He said, I can't say this stuff. And eventually they gave him something that, quote, he could work with. And although he may not have been at heart their greatest salesperson, but he fell into the role of the salesperson that they needed in front of the UN.
Well, if you take a look at his delivery, and I will share with you this, if you take a look at his delivery, you'll see that you could sense a uneasiness. Without question, you can sense an uneasiness, even in what he did deliver. That was not him being completely relaxed. But to go into detail about that really doesn't serve at this point. But it's only to say that you'll find that each dynamic, once you're able to pick it up, and once you learn the skill to be able to pick it up, will actually give you the opportunity for what's called win-win situations. And that's the challenge of every individual, is to produce a win-win situation. Not win-lose, because win-lose only gives another opportunity for win-lose. And that's really what it does, because anytime you lose a challenge or an opportunity, what you're going to do is look for another opportunity to win. So therefore, whoever won is going to have to lose. So why in the world would you set up win-lose situations when you're only going to be challenged at it again? Why not set up a win-win situation where everybody's happy and everybody's willing to win-win again? Unfortunately, human dynamics, the way we are trained now, it's all about the winning for self. And it's never really played out well in the black family, but it happens all the time in it, because we're challenged. Even while we're in school, why don't you have the grades of Johnny? Because I'm not Johnny, Mom. I have my grades because I'm me. And you could do better. Yeah, I could do better. But if you knew who I was, I probably would. And you're treating me like Johnny, but I'm not Johnny, Mom. Treat me like Barry, because that's who I am. But then, you have the human dynamics of realizing that this person is the example, the icon, the epitome of, and then the other child is lesser than. And they've got to live through life thinking that, well, I'll never be able to live up to this person's expectations of me. Of course, because they didn't give you a fair grading to work with. You're already on the course that you can't win anyhow, because you're never going to be that way. You can't do what Johnny does, because you're not Johnny. Now, if they understood what the dynamics of Barry was, you'd be just up there with Johnny. You'd be at your best. If we taught in schools from that perspective, understanding, now they're starting to understand that people learn differently. 20 years ago, 30 years ago, they didn't understand that at all. And so they taught with a single syllabus, not realizing that there's different dynamics going on in the classroom. With different dynamics going on in the classroom, maybe Johnny's not best sitting next to Joe, because they're not going to pay attention. They're going to love each other. It's going to be a love fest where they're going to talk to each other all day long. They're not going to hear a word from the teacher up front, who happens to have a different dynamic herself to begin with. So we're experiencing the results of people not listening. They're not doing effective listening. If they were to, they would find that, okay, this person is coming from a completely different dynamic. And that's not just to say the environmental change or differences they have in their home. We're talking about their human development itself. And then you add upon that their environmental situation. But if we only come from the environment, you'll have some success, but you won't have the success that you're looking for. You'll answer some issues, but you won't answer the whole person.
This is Whcr 90.3 on the FM dial. Our program is Respect for Life. On the line are two guests, Brother Sami Muhammad and Brother Barry Smith, whom you just heard made his insights. And what comes to mind, Barry, is this, and it may or may not apply to you or either of you, but I'm throwing this your way, because what about the effect that being in this environment, black people being in this environment, that our way of thinking and listening is entirely different, or maybe it's an urban thing. Maybe down south we heard and we're using our more natural skills in listening and communicating in a much different way than in this, quote, more urban area or corporate arena. Your thoughts, your observations. I don't know whether you've studied that or it's come up in your study or not.
Well, it personally hasn't come up in my studies, but it's come up in my life. I was born and raised in New York. I'm now living in the Dallas, Texas area, and not in the city of Dallas. And there is quite a different dynamic as to how people, the ebb and flow of how people talk, act, and speak. Some of this is based on the reality of their surroundings, and some city, my understanding from my own personal experience, that the city dwelling situation changes your dynamic because of the environment that you're in and how you perceive what's said. The challenges are completely different. In a city dwelling, it really is dog eat dog. There's no question about that. And it really is a matter of, I would say, a personal consciousness to be able to be this way, to be effective. But you can be effective in any environment if you choose to be. That's another area where it's called self-mastery. Because you can't really impact the outside world until you've effectively impacted yourself. If you cannot work with the dynamics within yourself, then how can you be effective for others? You have to have a sense of mastery within yourself. Because the truest and best way to teach is by being an example. even if it's for a short period of time.
Mm-hmm.
Every short period of time makes up your life. So as you're developing these short periods of time where you are effective, you are actually running the stream or the picture of life for other people. And they see it. And within that experience, they can learn something. Because the training room is also life. I mean, that's just the way it is. Everything you do is part of your life. So all of it is experiential. And you learn something from your mistakes or your successes or not. And that's where the dynamics change, as in city dwelling or being in an area where the population is really small. How much time do you have to spend on really effectively being what you need to be? When you don't have as many distractions, you have an opportunity to reflect. When you're in the city, you don't have very much time to reflect. You have to make time for that. And so it's what was effective, do it again. What was effective, do it again. Unfortunately, sometimes what was effective was wrong. But you've already built on that so many times that now it becomes right. And when wrong becomes right, that's really scary. But that's exactly what happens. And within the context of the black family, unfortunately, we follow examples not knowing the history of how they got to where they are. And when we see the results, if we ever sat down with the person and they actually explained what went on in their life, we would find out that was 30 years of hard work to get to here. It didn't happen overnight. But our expectations is that everybody should be like this. Well, do we have 30 years to wait on it?
Ladies and gentlemen, this is WHCR 90.3 on the FM dial. In fact, this conversation is new ground for me. You hear me saying, and you can have your friends and relatives plug in by way of the internet, www.whcr.org. The information that we tend to present over this program and other programs that we do at WHCR tend to be unique and therefore of value to anyone who plugs in. And if you can get a friend or a relative to plug in from afar, then you're doing them a good deed. Brother Sami, Brother Barry touched on this dog-eat-dog and styles. And when I talk to you now, I've not known you that long, but your manner is so calm in the midst of this environment that when I talk to you, I say, this brother's always calm, man. Ain't nothing to get upset. How much of that were you, quote, born with? How much of that may have been impacted on by the training that you got in effective communications?
Well, I think a lot of it, I Barry could tell you, I think I changed after the training. Not that, my prior training, well, we brought up, know yourself,
right.
And do for self,
right.
That was always my philosophy. I mean, since I was real young, we come up in the black experience, your mother, welfare, So there's certain things that she couldn't give me. So early in life, I knew that I had to go get it for myself. It's just funny that I was with my granddaughter and my daughter. I remember my sister, and my sister was telling my granddaughter that, your grandfather, when he was young, he had a shoe shine box, a newspaper route, carry packages, plus sold shopping bags in the Marquetta. So I'll just give you a little bit of background. So, so I always was doing stuff, and sometimes I get bored real quick. I go from one thing, and once I not master it, then I want to go into something else, and it's called growth. That's what it's really called. But when I went to this training, is that it kind of showed me that, you know, if you master yourself, and we know that, you know, then everything on your external you can take care of.
Mm.
You know, there's nothing that you cannot take care of. So that's how it. And then we had some other trainers too. We had empowerment training, and there's some other trainers that came with it that more or less rounded out that give my demeanor. Well, I'm a laid back person anyway.
Okay.
You know, so that's where that comes from.
You don't say anything, but you listening.
Barry know that. But no happened. That the training, what the training did, is that you can't always be laid back. You got to step up.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's when you. I'm just throwing this in. I haven't had training. That's when you're reticent. You're laid back, and sometimes you have to step forward. And you do that when you pick up cues from the other person.
Yes.
So that it's a effective communication is listening, looking, and feeling.
And knowing.
And knowing. All right, that's let me tell you what the three that you got to give me the fourth one in terms of breaking that one down. Listening, that's obvious. Taking in enough information or data that the other person is conveying. Looking, watching body language, hands, gestures, etc., eyes closed, not closed, whatever. And feeling, and that's where I'm getting into the kind of dialogue that black people have, picking up on someone's vibes, maybe in a more scientific way, listening to their tone. But then again, picking up on their vibes. Now, and you say knowing.
Yeah, knowing in the sense of knowing who that person is. I think that's the
okay.
When you start talking about the intangibles.
Yes.
Okay, and knowing those intangibles will give you a better insight to talk to that person that he would hear you.
Now let me go back to something that Barry said, and you also reaffirm. And that is the mastery of self. You take this training and you go further into this training than just a participant, to the extent that you are a facilitator or a co-trainer today. You train along with Barry.
Yes.
Talk about that evolution.
Well, when I was in the training, it was real dynamic because usually the training is maybe have 15, 20 people. My training was unique. I only had two people.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So
wait a minute. This was set up by the place that you worked for.
Yeah, this was their employment.
Okay. So it was two of you in the class with Barry.
Yeah.
And they bring this guy in to train two people. So you guys either were number one guys that they wanted to be number three.
Let me run it back. I was a participant. This is when I was on the other side. I wasn't facilitating.
No, I'm saying that. You were a participant along with the other co-worker.
Yes, the other person.
So either you guys, the two of you, had to be dynamic, and they wanted you all to be super dynamic, or you were just man.
We've been going. So what happened is that with two people, you have no place to hide.
Mm.
So I got the full force of this training. I mean, full force. So it's good and bad. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
I got the full blast, but yet and still I got a lot out of it. And what happens is that when you're in the training, you don't, because you're part of it, so you really don't see certain things.
Okay.
But when I came out and Barry asked me to facilitate the training with him, I mean, it opened up my eyes, and I mean, I seen so much stuff, that I didn't see because I was going through it.
Right.
But when sitting on the outside, and now you can see the forest from the trees.
Mm.
It was such a a eye opener.
Mm.
Okay, for me, and it was um, epiphanies. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, just dropping down, just like manna from the sky, man. you
Well,
know.
If I could share something right in here, there's an expression that I heard from one person who took the training, and afterwards he looked at a person who was reacting just like him, and he said to me, and this is at a conference table, he said, "Did I look like that?"
Mm.
And I said, "Just like that." He's like, and his head just hung
Mm.
because he didn't believe what was being said until he stood outside himself to see someone similar to him do it.
Mm.
And it was like, oh, I had no idea people were seeing me like this.
Mm.
Of course you don't, because this is your normal way of being. But when you step outside yourself and you see it elsewhere, you go, wow,
Man.
I've got some work to do. I didn't think that was what was happening. And it's exactly what goes on. The dynamics is phenomenal. It really is.
And Barry, how did you come into this training yourself?
Well, this is experiential, and I've gone across quite a few different training programs myself. And I had opportunity to exist in an office where they said, okay, look, we need training for people, and we want you to help us with training. Because I had done training in various different aspects throughout my entire professional career. I was in human resources for over 25 years and had to deal with all sorts of developmental training for managers and supervisors and so forth. And it just so happens that I had opportunity to crystallize a training that existed and really reshaped it to a degree, but it's all experiential. And as I had a chance to do that, I was able to pretty much hone in on the things that I knew needed to be done. And in this particular case, this is the essence of several trainings.
Okay.
And you mentioned Dale Carnegie before.
Yeah.
Some people's experience of Dale Carnegie is that it rips you apart and then it rebuilds you.
Yeah.
I have no interest in ripping people apart.
Right.
It doesn't do me any good to do that, because what happens if I rip you apart and then I don't get the opportunity to put you back together?
Exactly.
I've sent a person out there in the world who's going to do nothing but destroy.
Mm.
So that's not my interest. And what I do is I have you experientially see what's going on. And basic, it's an opportunity for you to take a look at your communications specifically. Just how do you hear people? How well do you listen? Are you actually delivering the message you think you're delivering? And what is the effect of your deliverance? Have they heard you? If you were effectively listening to how they responded to you, can you reshape that message such that they hear you? Because the way you normally would deliver it, they won't.
Mm.
So that was the importance of most of the trainings that I was actually involved in. And so with that, we harnessed this, and we've actually made it a 1.5-day training. It could actually be as long as a 3-day training, but we've actually cut it down because unless they get corporate sponsorship or they get a business to allow them to have time off, it's almost impossible for a person to take 3 days off from work
Right.
in a business setting, unless, of course, like I said, their employer decides that they want to let them loose for that long.
Right.
A day and a half, they get an opportunity to do it over the weekend. They can go back to work and then shock their employer.
Now, listen, Brother Sami, what did you learn in the workshop that you took about the role of listening?
Well, listening, it was very, very important because a lot of times people say certain things and that's not what they mean. So, and from my mediation days, we learned that what people don't say is very important. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
What they leave out. And sometimes they give you enough to connect the dots. So some people may I couldn't I can't go into that example, but but that's what happens. So listening, and really hearing what people have to say, because a lot of times you cut people off and they don't have the opportunity to express their full thoughts.
Okay.
And so when you do that, then you miss out to really what the person is trying to tell you.
So that touches on part of the role of listening is not interrupting.
Yes.
That part. And part of the role of listening and following through on the role of listening is not always talking.
You're right.
Okay, so far so good. Now, what they leave out, how do you know that they've left something out?
Well, it becomes when I first learned it, I learned it in mediation, and people talk, they talk and they talk around a subject, and they really, because they don't know how you're going to take what they have to say.
Okay.
I give an example. There's a lot of catchwords that people say that soon that you hear them say these certain catchwords, you know that they're saying something else. But they're not. I can give you try to calm it down. A person who's been molested, a young person's been molested.
Mm-hmm.
That they have been, but there's certain stuff that they will say that will lead you to say that there's something deeper happening, in this person. Okay, but they just won't say it. They don't have the heart to say it, or they've been programmed or denial not to say it, So if you're a good listener, there's certain buzzwords, okay, that people say, and you say, and once you in this situation so long, you hear them, So soon you hear that word, you know that this is this situation, or it's a possibility that it's that situation, and most of the time, 99%, you're right.
When you say 99%, you're right about what you felt.
Yeah, your intuition.
But you don't. And this is a key thing. This training, sounding scientific, and that's my phrase, does not deny utilization of your intuition. This is to both of you.
No, it doesn't at all. As a matter of fact, it suggests that you utilize it to the max.
Yeah.
But you also need to understand this. You need permission to react to the person in front of you. You may know this, but if you don't have permission, and they will give you permission, either verbally or physically or whatever way, they will give you permission to go ahead. But if you don't have permission, you can't go ahead with it.
Go ahead.
You got to give an example of permission, getting permission, cueing, giving cues to do I have permission to, you got to give that.
Okay, well, since you said I got it, I will. When a person's talking to you, they'll look at you and you can read their eyes as to whether or not they want you to go further.
Okay.
There are times you can see in their eyes they're begging you, please don't ask me the next question because I'll answer it, but I don't want to.
All right.
And you've got to make them comfortable enough to say to you, either with their eyes or in feeling, that they're willing to tell you. Now, there
Okay.
are times that they'll actually tell you in the setting, I can't discuss that in front of the room.
Mm-hmm.
There are things that goes on in the room that I would say to you, if that's what they feel, then I understand that. I can respect that. But there's reasons why I can't go into it too far, because there's confidentiality agreement that is necessary because of situations like that.
Mm-hmm.
Some people are not comfortable. They just, listen, how do I know that this is not going to become public information?
Right.
And in all honesty, they need an agreement. And it's in all fairness, they're right. They do. They should have one. But when you're dealing in life, if you've dealt with effective communication to begin with, if you've listened really to this person and you understand this person, you've already have an agreement with them that they're being honest and open with you.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're speaking authentically with you. They're speaking with you in a way in which you can realize that makes sense based on what I see and what you're doing.
Let me throw to you a couple of styles before we conclude this session of our effective communication sessions with you and Brother Sami, and that is there are folks whose style is they don't release information. They just don't give up information unless it's someone very close to them or that they trust. Close to them meaning in trust, in a trust relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And there are those individuals who just they're always talking. Not that it's negative, but they're always talking and giving up information, trading information, giving up information. And once again, that's not a negative, but that's at least two styles that I've seen. And the talk about those two styles in terms of communicating with them.
Well, the person or the individual who doesn't give up information, you need to understand what it is that they're looking for in their communication, what they're looking for in you. And there are certain qualities that they need to know that you possess. And that's part of the training, too. Certain qualities they need to know that you possess.
Okay.
In order for you to get them to open up. Because they will open up to you. You just need to know what it is that they're looking for. And then you have to be that for them. And the person who is communicating all the time, also beware that because a person speaks, that doesn't mean they're saying anything. And so you have to sometimes
wait.
you got to sometimes say, okay, now what were you trying to tell me? Because you said a lot by saying nothing. So what were you really trying to say? And sometimes you can't do that. If you're in a public setting, you really can't do that because that's embarrassing. But
right.
What you have to do is you have to sit there with them and wait and actually get them to understand by waiting with them that, okay, and so that they finally, as they say, give up the ghost. They finally tell you what it is that they have to say. And in some cases,
okay,
they're never going to tell you. It has to be just like Raheem mentioned earlier. Dr. Raheem mentioned earlier.
Mm-hmm.
You have to hear what they're not saying because they're telling you everything. It's like Morse code. Dot, dash, dash, dot, dash, dash. And you've got to read. What does that dot mean? What does that dash mean? Okay, I see it because there's the word, there's the dot. The dot is the important part.
Okay. And this speaks to not interrupting, but listening and having the patience. When we talk about training, we're talking about a set program where a person is trained to be more effective. But within our discussion here, a person listening to this discussion can pick up cues as to what they can do to become more effective. And I'm throwing this, that person who's talkative, you may be irritated by the fact that they're just talking, or communicating. But if you have the patience, and this I'm throwing out to you, the patience to listen, you will hear what they're saying.
Correct. And there's one phrase that I can share with you, and it's an important phrase too, and you might have heard it elsewhere. But people don't care how much you know as long as they know how much you care.
Okay.
If you're not willing to sit there
Got
to get them to understand that for this moment it's about them.
Got it.
It's not about anything else that's going on in the room. It's not about anything else that's going on in the street. It's not about anything else that's happening wherever you are, that it's about them.
Beautiful.
Then they can say, okay, finally somebody's hearing me. Let me say what I've been trying to say for years.
Beautiful.
Because I've been trying to find somebody who was willing to listen to me.
I'm trying to use as much time as can, but during our conversation, something popped up on my radar, and that is police interrogations and false confessions.
Yes.
Your observation. How a person can confess to something they didn't do. Power of suggestion or just talking. And it's really, they have confessed on videotape. Maybe you've observed that or studied it. Maybe you haven't. Maybe that's something for another time.
I can say clearly that there's a lot more to the dynamics than just what you hear on the tape. There's a lot more to the dynamics. I haven't gone into detailed study of that specifically because I really didn't want to.
Okay.
To be perfectly honest with you, it's an area that I think best left to those who are using it.
In that area, okay.
Yeah, in that area, and it's not something that I wanted to delve into. But yes, there's a part of what I'm talking about is also used there. I mean, that's got to be true. You're in an isolated room. It is all about you. There is no question about it being all about you. And it's practically a clinical setting where it can't be anything else but you. But that's intentional and that's understood. As a matter of fact, they don't hide it. That's televised. If you just sit back and you just watch the TV for 20 minutes, you'd find it somewhere on the dial. I should say now on your remote control because dials are no longer used. But the truth of the matter is that's public information now. They've got programs called Cops. You look at Cops and you say, wow, there it is. There's that dynamic right there.
Now, I just want to shift to a conclusion. And ladies and gentlemen, our guest online is Brother Barry Smith, and he indicated he's talking to us in the Dallas area, and Brother Sami Muhammad, he's right here in New York City, right here in Harlem, USA. From both of you, rather, two things that people can do within their homes, within their family or community settings, business, to be able to be more effective in communication. I'm taking you, Brother Sami, first.
Well, the main thing is listening. The listening, and really hearing what your children is talking about. The only other two things I can say is everybody's different, and everybody has potential for growth and development, and treat everybody different, and maximize on their personality and what they do good. So that's my point, my 2 points.
Okay, Brother Barry.
Well, it's not something that they can do because I was reading a book as well as listening to an audio tape of which the one point, and it really stood out very strong, it's a not to do list. There's some things you just need to stop doing. It's not that you're doing anything wrong, per se, but there are some things that are just not effective. You need to stop doing it. Stop comparing. Don't compare any one of your children to any one of the other children because they're not them. That's number one. Number two, treat that child as an independent, an individual. Do not say, because I beat Johnny, I'm going to beat Joseph. Because Joseph doesn't necessarily need to be beaten. He just needs to be told. Sometimes, because of who he is, just a telling is enough to scare the child. Some children never get beaten in their life, and they're really great kids. Why? Because they didn't need to be beaten. Some kids, you beat them and beat them and beat them, and nothing happens. They still act the same. Why? Because beating doesn't work. You know, you have to be able to understand the individual. So there are some things you need to stop doing. Don't compare them, and don't treat them the same. Treat them as an individual. And those are the two things I think every child would appreciate. Oh, and by all means, just like Abdul Raheem said, pay close attention to them. Listen. There's one thing that, as a parent, and I've experienced this as a parent, as well as a child. If only you heard what I said, you wouldn't be saying what you're saying to me right now. Because I was trying to tell you, if anything else, when you ask a child a question, don't presume to know the answer. Wait and see what the answer is from the child. Because they're telling you a lot. Even if they're not telling you the truth, they're telling you a lot if you just pay attention to them. Even if they're lying to you, they're telling you something. There's a reason why they're afraid to tell you the truth. Pay attention to that. Now, that makes a lot of sense too. If you really stop and think of it, why are they lying to you? There's got to be a reason.
Well, I tell you, I've been helped with this discussion because I've been helped.
and Barry, you have to leave.
Yes, I do. Yeah, I do have someplace I need to be.
Well, with both of you, I want to thank you very much. And this is the first of a number of interviews we'll be doing with both of you regarding effective listening. God bless you both and have a fantastic week.
Okay.
Thank you so much. You folks have a great day.
Peace.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes Respect for Life. I want to thank you all for listening and remind you to pick up the Amsterdam News